What's up, everybody? My name's Addison Huddy, and this is the 5th episode of Apache Geode by Example. Today we're going to go over queries, but we're going to do a little bit more than that. We're going to do some live coding, where we're going to change a serialization method from using Java serialization to using something called PDX. PDX stands for Portable Data Exchange. It's a serialization format that Apache Geode uses. It's also the name of the Portland International Airport. A lot of the development of Apache Geode happens in Portland. I don't think it's a coincidence that it's named PDX. That's the rumor. And then we're going to look at two ways to do queries in Apache Geode via a query service on the client, and we're also going to play around with gfish a little bit. So a little bit on serialization, a little bit on queries. We're going to do an entire episode just on serialization because it is a big topic. I'm going to link to this article by one of the committers on Apache Geode, Bruce, who gives a full overview of what PDX is, how it works, some of the benefits. The two big ones in my mind that we'll touch upon. One is forward and backwards compatibility. There's a type registry inside Apache Geode that manages, if I need to add a field in a class that I create, PDX and Apache Geode handle all the backwards and forward compatibility changes and stuff, so I don't have to worry about that. And the other thing I don't have to do is upload any of my classes to Apache Geode. We're going to rely on reflection and PDX to do all that for us, so we can focus on our application rather than having to do some setup and stuff like that. So as always, we have our Geode examples, and we'll go inside queries because we're going to need that. And let's put this into presentation mode so it gets all big. And I don't like full screen, so we'll exit full screen, but we'll have all the benefits. Cool. So what are we looking at? Okay, inside of queries, looks like we have an example class, a main method. We have a client cache that we create here. We're going to need to do some stuff here, so I'm going to add a to-do here because we're going to come back, and that's use reflection. Touch on that in a second. We create a region. Looks like we create a bunch of employee data based off of, I'm guessing, that class, where we use put all to take this map and put it in the cache. Looks like the keys are an integer type, and the employee data is the object that we're putting. And then we have this down here where we're going to do the queries above. Now, Apache Geode uses something called OQL. It stands for Object Query Language. It's SQL-like in its syntax. And we're going to issue 3 queries here. We're going to select everything, all distinct values in example region. We're going to pass in a where clause. It looks like these employees have hours per week. And we're also we have an example here of a parameterized query. Cool. And we just go down here, and this method is going to do all those queries. So we should see some stuff, the results of those queries printed out on the screen when we run this. This takes advantage of the query service here. The query service is available on the cache object, and then we just pass in new query, our query as a string, and then we just call execute, and that'll execute on the server, and we get back a result, and the results here, and it looks like we have a little helper function down here that takes the result, kind of parses it out, and makes it pretty when we print it out. Now, inside of employee data, let's see. Looks like we're using the Java serializable class to serialize these objects. Everything that goes over the wire or goes into Apache Geode needs to be serialized in some way. now using the Java serialization method, we have to pass in via the class path exactly what we're putting. It needs to have access to these, because how would it, once the data gets to the server, how will it know what it is? It needs to deserialize it. It needs to know the shape of those objects. If we wanted to make a change to our objects, we would have to re-upload those classes. Now that can be a big pain, especially when you're dealing with a really, really big cluster. And what's nice using PDX, we don't have to do that. We don't have to worry about serialization too much. We're just going to use reflection, and that's it. That's all we have to do. So we get to take that off of our start method. So like before, we have a locator. We're starting two servers. We have a partition region called example region. Really simple start script. But now we don't have that class path that we have to pass in. Now, if we go back here, we're going to have to do a few things. We can get rid of this piece of data, or we are implementing serializable. We don't have to worry about that. And we can just write our class. It looks like we have access to first name, last name, employee number. That's the key that we're putting. We have email, salaries per week. So we can use all those in some of the queries that we're going to play around with later. One thing that we have to do, because we're going to use reflection while we're here, is we need to pass in a default noarg constructor, like so. And that's all we got to do there. Now we're going to use reflection. We're gonna tell our cache here to set PDX serializable to use the new use the reflection auto serializer. Now reflection is a feature of Java. It's a feature of some other languages. Not every language has reflection, but via the class loader method, we're able to, at runtime, inspect our code. We're able to look at that employee data object, see the shape of it, and reflect or modify at runtime kind of what we want our object to be. So we can then go over and create a PDX object that we're going to put on the server. And we're going to do that on the client using reflection. This takes a pattern, and that pattern is the class. So we're going to go geode examples, and we're going to pass in a wildcard. So everything in that class will be serialized using the reflection-based auto serializer. And that's it. That's all we have to do to use PDX and the reflection-based auto serializer in our app. Now we don't have to worry about reflection too much, and uploading that class path via the class path any of the Java classes that we're creating. Cool. And let's see what this looks like when we run it. If we go, let's go back here, and first we need to use Gradle. Let's build. This is probably gonna yell at me because I need to run spotless, and let's see if it yells. It's gonna yell. Yep, there it goes. Let's run spotless apply. Cool. And now let's build it. Let's start up our cluster, and this is going to start up locator. It looks like we have some of those processes running. I'm just going to go in and kill all those processes that we need to worry about. Let's start this. Looks like that killed my ID. That's fine. We're done editing code anyway. At least let's hope so. Let's hope we didn't make any mistakes. So it's going to start up locator. It'll start up a server. And while this is happening, let's split this. Let's pop up to here and get gfish all loaded. So bin gfish, awesome. Now we have gfish. Let's connect. Sometimes you pass in locator information, and we could just say localhost and we're running this on, what are we running this on? Should be the default port, like so, and that'll connect to the locator. If you just type in connect and you're using default ports, it'll do that. So now we're connected here. If we just do boom Gradle and run, we should see this run and get back all our queries. Awesome. So we can see how fast that was. We're able to use those queries to get back data from our cluster using parameterized queries. We have some where clauses. Pretty cool. Now, we can do the same thing with gfish. If we let's issue one that I know is going to fail, and it's important to understand why this fails. We're going to select everything from the example region, and this is going to give us a serialization error because it's going to come back and it's going to try to deserialize this into that class, but we don't have that class information. However, what we can do is we can get back a result, something like, we'll take X. So all the objects in the region, and we'll do something like last name. That gives us back all the last names because it's not trying to deserialize the whole object. We're just getting back those particular fields in the result. And we can even do stuff like this. This is pretty fun. We'll do select count star from that example region. We can see, we saw on the right that we put 14 entries, and let's see if that gets back 14. Awesome. So this is just at a really high level. We looked at queries both via gfish and the query service that's available on the client. We also took a look at PDX, and that is a serialization format. If you want more info on that, we're going to do a full episode on serialization, and I'm also going to link to that article by Bruce below. So I hope this was a good overview of queries, and I'll see you next week.